Yep, I do like the colour that's on these plants. Okay, so I'm on macro, close up, or spot culling, but I've got the shroud back on. I'm 3 right and 2 down, because it's a sort of dull-y day, sun's coming in, it's also late afternoon. As you can see, the people over there, they're putting up the building. I've transferred these ones 2 into there. You can see the sand's getting nice and starting to get nice and grey sort of thing, as you can probably see. So yeah, that one I don't know if it's going to make a response, but you know, it's got another week to go, and then it should start reacting a bit like this. Oh, you can see the bubbles coming up there. Yeah. I put a few cuttings in there to see if this is what the secret of the water secret is. Maybe they do it with charcoal and then they filter out all the green stuff and then put the stuff in, and suddenly they get this amazing striking rate, but you know nothing about the charcoal. Maybe that's what it is, I don't know. Anyway, I've taken that one that was over there, I've put it in here, so hopefully in another 3 weeks, 2.5 to 3 weeks, it'll take like a week to settle in, and then it will get to this sort of stage where this one's starting to make a move. I don't know if you can see this in there sort of thing, but I like the colour of the traps here, very natural looking, not very big plants, but then again, considering all it is sand and newspaper cellulose, but it's so totally different to this one, and the only difference is it's just spatially different, it's flipped. Yeah, I think we're going to make some progress, and hopefully with the polystyrene down there we'll see something happen maybe. And with the charcoal down here, I don't know if you can notice this, but can you see the charcoal? I just put the charcoal in, I didn't push it down or anything, and it's just got the sand cap on top where it's the weight of the sand down on the charcoal, but you can visibly see the charcoal seems to be pushing out, whether that's because the charcoal expands when it gets wet. Whether there will be even more of an expansion if you use, I didn't use hot water on this, but I used hot water on that. So you might want to think about that. You might want to do an experiment between hot water and no hot water sort of thing when you do this sort of experiment. I'm thinking of setting up another pot where I'll get some charcoal and wrap it in cotton wool. So I'll get lumps, hand-sized sort of lumps of charcoal, and wrap them in cotton wool and put them down the bottom of a pot, and then put sand on top. So yeah, this seems to be making some progress. It's splitting up. I might get 5 or 6 reasonable rhizome. This cutting I took out of that pot, put it in there, it's stabilised quite well. So if you put it into a pot like this, they will stabilise quite well. This is making a little bit of a move, a bit late in the season. As I was saying the other day, they're predicting it's going to be the coldest winter on record since records kept in 1839. With that, I might believe them, because the cold weather seems to be coming early. As I said, normally as we get into April, the nights get cold and the cirrus start to colour up. The coolness coming off the Antarctic has already arrived. It's maybe 3 weeks, maybe almost a month earlier than normal. So as the nights get colder, if the nights get any more colder, these should start to colour up. But so we're going to lose this lovely growth. But I don't know if you can see this, but if I take this shroud off, but there's some amazing growth starting to happen down there. So late in the season too. So you know what would have happened if we'd had this amazing growth at the beginning of the season. Yeah. So yeah, I've got another one of these ones out too. So it's that one, and I've got this Ruber thing there. I might want to put a hand behind it, sort of get a bit of a, yeah. Got a new picture coming on that one. Reasonable rhizome down there. So yeah. Anyway, so a lot more work to do, but we are making progress, and I think we're going to go somewhere and we do our pit of Pauline or something out the front garden there. We might put some cereals in it this coming season. So, but having said that, if I can get this damn thing on. As I said, when it works really well, and then otherwise it's a pain in the butt. There we go. As you can probably come over to here with these ones here. Once some of those are with copper in it, so copper is not really a negative once you get over it, sort of thing. So they've sort of coloured up, maintained their proliferance like a biofilm. Now I've done one experiment where I put it in the fridge and take it out, and it doesn't grow if you put it in the fridge. The next question is, once it's grown, if we put it in the fridge, does it die off, or does it maintain itself? You know, like you knock off a few cells every few days, but they grow back slowly in the fridge, sort of thing. The reason I'm saying this is, if you repot as you go into our wet or our winter sort of thing, you reduce the amount of biofilm in your pots. It gets down to that magic 8 degrees, and bingo, you know, there's nothing in the pot to support the plant. So, you know, when it comes to spring, you get nothing. I'm getting to the idea you should pot them up before the temperature starts falling. You've also got to pot them up into a pot that has a biofilm in there, sort of thing, your red organism all throughout, sort of thing. You know, your charcoal down the bottom and your sand up the top, sort of thing, with your biofilm all in there, sort of thing. And then you leave them in the winter, and the biofilm in the pot supports the plant during the dormancy. And as I said, this idea we got from last year is this notion that they actually grow more during the wet, you know, the so-called dormancy period. As long as it doesn't go to, you know, much 0 degrees or too much below 0 degrees, they'll actually continue to grow, and actually grow more than they, you know, the rhizomes fatten up. It's a bit like when you get a plum tree, right? All the leaves drop off, and you think there's no activity for about 4 to 6 weeks, and then slowly, even though there's no leaves on the trees, you start noticing buds, and you start noticing the bark starts to change, and it gets that lovely sort of glossy, reflective look. So there's a lot of activity actually going on when you think the tree is actually dormant, but it's not. You've only got like a bare-rooted 4 to 6 weeks to send your bare roots around before the plant starts to actually make some major activity, and then you can't actually post them around as bare roots, sort of thing, if you're talking about plum trees and similar sort of stone fruit trees, sort of thing. So my suggestion is you're probably going to have to pot them up at what you think is the wrong time of year, when you could actually damage roots and it's hot and things like that. Or, you know, pot them into a pot that has a biofilm, or you have the ability to create a biofilm in like 4 days or something. And you sit them through the wet when you think they're dormant, but if you notice it with a biofilm in the pot, you might actually get active growth that's actually greater than during the growing season. So you build up this massive rhizome ready for the spring. And then you get these really massive pitchers, of course, because it's all taking the... So these little protein packet piranhas that are in the soil, the plant is slowly accumulating those, you know, all that nutrition, that nutriment from those, when you think the plant is actually dormant, building up from this biofilm that's in the soil, sort of thing. And then you get this massive growth in the spring, sort of thing. So that's just my idea. Anyway, my other idea at the moment, having got to this notion the other time, I better go to the spot, kind of, you won't be able to see it, will you? And if I can get there. Yeah, over here. Yeah, the camera's a bit slow. We got this notion that salt and zinc are almost interchangeable in a way. I'm also going to start playing around with different forms of zinc, you know, like zinc metal and things like that. We've already looked at zinc metal, and we've looked at lead, and we've looked at molybdenum, and so on and so forth. So zinc and salt are almost interchangeable. You can put salt in there and it acts like zinc, and you put zinc in there and it sort of seems like you can't tell the difference, you see. You really can't tell the difference with some of these things. They basically do the same thing, and you can replace one with the other and they get basically the same result, basically. You know, if you did a blindfold test, you couldn't tell the difference, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. Now I'm getting the notion, I'm testing the idea, getting the notion and testing the idea that maybe potassium acts like urea, and urea acts like potassium, which is very strange because one's a nitrogen source and one's the idea that maybe your potassium salts, in particular ones, you know, your potash and things like that, actually generates urea, but it probably only does it at the right pH sort of thing. And so instead of messing around trying to get the pH right, why don't you just take the potassium out of the equation and just add urea? it's there. You don't have to worry about the pH. It's already there, sort of thing. That's the idea. So I'm going to test that out and see how we go. And if we can totally replace potassium with urea, well, we can totally replace zinc with salt, you'll end up with urea salt, which is very strange conundrum, sort of thing. From a aquaponics point of view, I don't know. Aquaponics, are there more land fish than there are sea fish, or vice versa? I think I would put it to you, there's probably more sea life, sea aquatic life, aquaponic life in the ocean than there is on land. So maybe the notion of urea salt is not so too far-fetched and fanciful as you may at first think. So anyway, so I'll play around with all the bottles, but as I said, it seems to be we're chasing the dragon's tail, but that could be due to the fact we have these interchangeable categories or interchangeable criteria, I suppose. One looks like the other, and that's why it's confusing. So you're getting multiple factorials from the combinations. You'd have to double your well, it's a 2 factorial if you've got 2 things. So if you've got then potassium and urea, that's another 2 factorial. So is that factorial multiplication or factorial addition? So does it go from 4 plus 4 is 8, or do you actually multiply them? So you end up with 16. You've got to go through an actual 16 quadrat grid to actually discover both the zinc, sodium and the potassium urea sort of situation. Or do you only have to do 8? Is it an additional mathematical computation, or is it a multiplicative computation sort of thing? That's what I'm trying to say anyway. But we're still trying to chase this one, which is our control sort of thing. So there obviously is, I would say, that's just an egg and a candle in there with polystyrene. And the difference, one of the major differences is with the rounded polystyrene, once the organism starts to grow, it's able to fall down through the beads. Even though it does cling onto the beads to some extent, excess falls down and it spreads that way through the... But then again, as you can see, there are differences between things like zinc and aluminium sort of thing. Like with the aluminium, it just gets halfway down the thing, whereas with zinc it goes all the way down. So you've got to question yourself, why is that so? Professor Sunderland, the Miller sort of angle, why is it so sort of thing. And some of these other ones, when I was playing around with a bit of nickel, it seems to be nickel and copper seems to delay the response, because this one with the nickel in it, it is actually starting to pink, but it's been very delayed. When was this done? This was done Tuesday the 20th of February. So we're now at almost the 20th of... well, it's only a month, isn't it? Yeah, 20th. We're almost up to the 20th now of March, so it's been about a month, but it is delayed. It's not 4 days, and it's not 2 weeks. It's basically a month sort of thing. So anyway, so we'll see how we go. And the other thing, now having said that, talking about phosphorus and mycorrhizae fungi, there's this good chapter in here on there's just basically a page, but it has a really good summary talking about, fungi usually like to take in phosphorus and zinc. So there's the zinc angle there, and of course we know that zinc can be almost like salt. So you ask yourself, do they grow mushrooms with urea and salt? That would be a good question. But the problem with phosphorus here is mycorrhizae fungi are killed by soil fumigants such as methyl bromide and methane. The systemic fungicides benlate, now this really jumped out at me, because we were being told to use benlate for I think it was both for the A-scar average midge problem, I think it was, as well as the powdery mildew sort of thing, and also mealybug as well. I think they were telling us to use that too. So we were actually using something that would damage the mycorrhizal fungi. So people questioning the fact that whether CPs are mycorrhizal, maybe they never noticed it because they were using benlate. or telling us to use bentonite. So maybe they were telling us to use bentonite and they were using something else or not using it at all, I don't know. So, you know, for years, no wonder we had trouble growing plants, you know. The other thing is they are killed off in the soil if the potting mix is heating above 60 degrees for 30 minutes. So if you get a pot in the sun and you put it in some water or something and the water gets to 60 degrees, so the rest of the pot gets to 60 degrees, you're going to nuke your fungi, your mycorrhizal fungi, and you're not going to get good plant growth sort of thing. So, so you get something like, this got too hot, nothing wants to grow in it now. Whereas this, they are growing. So there's a difference there between whether you put them in water and get them roasted in hot water or not. So mycorrhizas are not falling on plants growing in soils with high soluble phosphorus. So there you go. So if you're using any of these sort of slow release fertilizers, that's going to be a problem too if you're using one which has high phosphorus in it, sort of thing. Even though it's being leached out in small amounts, eventually you're going to be competing with the mycorrhizal fungi you're trying to grow in the pot, if indeed CPs are mycorrhizal, which I suggest to you they are. I have got some photographic and video evidence from Capensis, Cephalotus, and Dionaea, and Binata. So that's 4. 2 genera and 4 species, I suppose. The normal level of phosphorus in potting mixes generally prevent formation of mycorrhiza. There you go. The normal levels of remember everyone said don't use commercial potting mix and make up your own, blah blah blah. Well, that could be another reason for it. Mycorrhizae fungi need oxygen, so they're effectively reduced under waterlogged conditions. So all this sitting your pots in water business, question. And then talk about orchid seeds, but that's just a general one on orchids. So this organism that we're chasing, I would suggest to you is definitely growing in an anaerobic sort of very strictly microaerophilic environment that we're trying to chase. But then again, we've discovered that charcoal, your standard charcoal here, can actually form an anaerobic sort of environment after about 3 weeks and get things growing sort of thing in there underwater, especially if you wet it up with hot water to drive out all that interstices air, you know, the 20% oxygen and your 78% nitrogen sort of thing. But there you go. So my suggestion is to you is not to repot, not to actually take the plant and put it in. If you're going to repot, repot it into a nice big chunk of soil that has a biofilm already in there, sort of thing, or pot earlier and put it into a pot that's going to develop the micro biofilm before you go into the cold weather, sort of thing. In other words, this, don't touch it basically. Now it's built up this microbiofilm in the soil from the newspaper cellulose that's down the bottom in that configuration. Don't transfer the plants into new soil. Keep them in the old soil. And if you're going to add old soil to the new pot, you really should have it around the plant and have it as a big chunk sort of thing. As I said, we're starting to think of the idea of having a big chunks of charcoal in your pot. And maybe I'm going to do an experiment where I'll wrap them with cotton wool, and I may have to put a window in the pot too. I'm thinking of putting a window, if I can, in the side of the pot so we can see whether the cotton wool around the charcoal goes pink and red sort of thing, or does it go green, you see? Because I get the impression if you use sphagnum it goes green, which I don't think we want. But if you use cotton wool, it will stay nice and pink, and that's probably when you get the growth. I put it to you that you get your actual nice, rapid development of growth. The growing part of the CPs is when the central bud or zone region of the plant and the leaf bases are all pinky red sort of thing. And the best growth on a Capensis is when the stipples are actually pink to red sort of thing. When they go to white and into the brown, you don't get the best growth. That's my suggestion to you anyway. So that's why I'm going to try using cotton wool. This one here with the sand, I think it is starting to pink in patches very gradually down there. So yeah, can you just about see that on there? There's a couple of patches there. They'll develop more over the next couple of weeks, but the sand seems to delay that, but maybe that's because it's not surfacted sand. You know, you have to have surfacted sand.